Hello everyone, today I Shivansh Bansal, co-founder at Law Community, welcome you all on Lawyers Speak. We have yet another special guest who is empaneled as arguing counsel for the Supreme Court in Group A category by Indian government. He is none other than Mr. Sridhar Potaraju, a senior legal professional with over 25 plus years of law practice in India's highest courts. He has been advocate on record in the Supreme Court of India for more than a decade, actively handling matters on behalf of corporate and institutional clients, including public sector, government, large listed PSUs, and firms. We are here to know more about his journey and learn from him.
Welcome for the interaction with us. And so my first question is, what factors influence you to choose law as a career, and how was your law school experience like?
Well, it's a very interesting question because this has been asked by many people earlier also. And then, to be honest, it was a very interesting elimination process, apart from also understanding certain interests that I had inherently, which made me take the call to decide upon law. I got exposed to the Constitution in a very nascent stage in my class 7th, namely the civics was a part of the social studies paper. I was educated in Hyderabad in All Saints High School. So when I got introduced to civics, that created a little interest in me about the Constitution and the way the governments work. That was the trigger for me to go forward to think about a career in law. And maybe my lack of aptitude for science and maths made the elimination process much more simpler for me. And that also was a factor which definitely let me assess my strengths and weaknesses very matter of fact kind of a thing. I mean, I was quite young at that stage, but one other interesting reason that actually brought me to law was that I noticed that courts had vacations, and only other profession which had vacations was teaching. And then at that stage, I could notice that teaching wasn't really that great in pay, and the status that a lawyer enjoys in the society at large was definitely higher. And then we also heard stories that they also are financially well-to-do. So maybe I thought that my natural inclination with words has always been there. I mean, I enjoy juggling words and then playing around words. That comes to me very naturally. And the fact that there's this profession which gives you a vacation and lets you earn enough to spend on the vacation, and then also the social status of respectability. So all three combinations were the ones which actually made me decide upon law. And then I think after that, I never looked at any other alternate career at all at any point of time after my 7th class, that I chose that I needed it to do law. And then I had a cousin of my mother who was a lawyer. He was a young lawyer at that stage, and then he used to speak very highly about Delhi University campus, and he would really appreciate the faculty there. So that's how I got to know about Delhi University, coming from Hyderabad, and with no legal background. I'm a first-generation lawyer, so I thought that maybe I'll have to aspire to get a seat in Delhi University campus. And then eventually, the very same uncle, out of the blue, brought an application form for the Delhi University, and then gave it to me when I was ready to write the entrance after my graduation in Hyderabad. And then I cleared the exam and I got a seat in the campus, and then I moved to Delhi in '94. And I studied from the Campus Law Center, '94 to '90.
So, sir, my next question is, after graduation, how did you pursue your career in law, and what challenges did you face in the nascent stage of your career?
Initially, I was planning to get into taxation and corporate law as a area of expertise. My father was a tax consultant; he's no more. And I come from a family of chartered accountants, so quite a few chartered accountants with my surname, about 10 or 12 of them, even in '94, '95. My own brother is a chartered accountant; he's got his own firm in Hyderabad. So it was a natural choice that I would do taxation and corporate laws and then go practice there. So I did a graduation in BCom honors, and then I chose to come to Delhi to do law, and with a plan to go back to Hyderabad to practice law there. But as things would turn out, that having studied in Delhi, I had an opportunity of exposure to eminent senior counsels from Supreme Court who used to come and address us over the weekend seminars and things like that. I honestly went back to Hyderabad to explore joining any office in Hyderabad, but somehow, as fate would have it, I never felt comfortable in that environment there. And then I came back to Delhi, and I actually went through a very bad, rough patch of unemployment for about a month and a half to 2 months, with visiting various law offices, dropping my CVs, hoping to hear from them, and then with no pedigree or no surname or no big powerful father in a position of power, the entry into the profession wasn't easy for me. I'm talking about 97. So I had my own state of depression, a kind of situation where I thought I'll give up and then go back to Hyderabad and do whatever comes my way, kind of a thing. And there's a friend of mine who's been with me since my campus days, who used to be very encouraging, and then put it in a way that I would still hope to give a shot. And then things fell in place gradually, and then I got my opening.
So, sir, my next question is, what advice or suggestion would you like to give to the professionals who have just started their career in law, or to the law students who are still studying?
I would say that law as a career is going to be a very tough path. And as I see, every profession is a tough call, and for the people who are pursuing it. So nothing comes easy in life. It looks greener on the other side, but when you actually get down to understand the turbulence that every successful professional or every professional has to go through, irrespective of pedigree or irrespective of powerful parentage, everyone has to go through a very tough phase of survival. So the first mantra is, you need to believe in yourself. You need to stay afloat. Survival is the key. Like in Corona, the only thing which we have to do is to survive, and then take all precautions to ensure that we survive, and then we extend our non-contamination space in Corona sense. Otherwise, in career also, it takes a lot of perseverance, self-belief, and discipline. Perseverance is required because mere self-belief without perseverance is incomplete. And then discipline is required because many a times you would be not engaged in an active target-oriented work environment, because if you're struggling to get work as a new professional, or if you're actually looking for a break, or you're planning to get into the profession after your final year or final semester exams, you need to be understanding one fact, that there's no shortcut. You have to play like a test match, and profession is like a test match. And then don't get carried away by the 2020 format that one gets to see. And please understand that profession is not like a game of what you call which you play on your mobiles or whatever, where you quickly run through the next level and then the next level and the next level. Here, the gap between one level and the other level could be a few years. For me, it was quite a few years before I could move from one stage of the career to the other stage. And then at every stage, there is a very tough climb. And having reached a point, then you hit a plateau where you can relax, you can enjoy your work, you can enjoy your space. And then again, there's another climb which comes, and which is unending. You need to have the patience to persevere. It's like a climb of the Mount Everest, and then you're climbing it over a span of 30, 40, 50 years of career. So you need to space yourself like a marathon runner and not a sprinter who gets exhausted after the sprint of 100 meters. And you won't survive the marathon. You need to have that frame of mind that you're in a long haul, a marathon. You need to dig deep, have patience, and then work hard and wait for your opportunities and make them come.
So my next question is, looking at the current pandemic scenario, how significant it has become for a lawyer to become tech savvy, and what are your views on virtual court system for hearings and e-filing system?
I think the current generation is already tech savvy. So the problem would be more for the earlier generations. And our generation, we were fortunate that we were introduced to computers by the time we entered our law schools. I'm talking about people who enrolled in 90s. So the generation prior to that is the generation which is really having a little difficulty, but you need to admire their resilience that they have adapted very well. So I don't see any difficulty for the current generation of students or lawyers entering the profession, because technology has simplified a lot of areas of court work, as we would see, because to be able to file on emails, to be able to present a judgment on a presentation option in a conference call like Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Team or video as the Supreme Court would uses. And having used the technology and presented case law in a live hearing, I feel that it's quite simple and then it's not at all difficult. It's just that the environment is a lot more relaxed and informal because you are at your own comfort zone and you're not in a courtroom where lots of people are staring at you and then there's a lot of chatter happening in the background. There's a lot of quiet space that you have while working and addressing the court or hearing the arguments of the other side. Technology has actually made it a more focused space because the entire concentration of the court and the participants is on the brief on hand, and there are very minimal distractions. That's the advantage, apart from the technical glitches on audio or video content. Other than that, I think that the level of concentrations are much higher in a video conferencing environment.
Okay, sir. So my next question is, how different or challenging it is to become an individual law practitioner rather than working in a big law firm?
See, it's a choice that one has to make as an individual as to what kind of work environment one chooses to be in. For me, as a person, probably I was an introvert, and then I was always with very minimal friends, and then I would still be more comfortable with a few set of close people with whom I can actually interact than in a larger social kind of a group. So that was one aspect of my decision making to be independent. And a corporate law firm or any environment of a law firm, also I had the experience of working there, and then I found that probably that was not what I was looking for, because you are definitely a team player there, and then even as an individual you are a team player. You are not isolated from the environment that you work in. So that's being a team player is a necessity for even an individual lawyer. So that's not a taken that you are not a team player that if you become an individual. But the difference that I perceived was that if you are looking at executing work without having to bother to procure work, maybe a law firm kind of an environment would be more feasible, because you are not having the pressures of having to generate work. And like any other commercial entity, marketing or getting work or getting business is the most crucial part of the business existence. So even for law firms, there are dedicated partners who focus purely on ensuring that there's a steady flow of work which comes into the firm, and there are a set of people who are very good executioners of work. Now, as you look at a career progression, what happens is in a law firm environment, the people who are executing would definitely get their growth trajectory, and they are the wheels who actually make the firms run. But the people who are able to generate work would get a better traction within the growth, and then they also get to monetize a lot of their work that they generate, as against mere executioners. So therefore, at some point of time within a law firm as well, I see a lot of mere peers who are in the law firm, so that they don't have to go through this phase, actually eventually land up having to generate work. But having been in part of that environment and the brand name of the law firm, enhances their opportunities to generate work. As against that, as an individual, you will be standing alone and you would have your small team of paralegal and legal associates who work with you. And it's by word of mouth in the traditional sense of an individual practice that the work starts trickling in. And for an individual lawyer, I'm looking at a litigating lawyer, it's always that the forum where you practice which is critical, because you cannot be seen to be running all over the forums, and it's a very difficult situation where you refuse work or you accept work or wait to get work in the forum you are. It's a very tricky kind of a situation. So, I mean, for speaking for myself, I happen to be in Supreme Court since 1999, towards the later part of 99. And then I was with the office of Mr. P.S. Narasimha, who's later designated as a senior advocate and then was a former ASG, formerly in the present regime. So I worked with him for about 2 years, and then I started getting work from my own classmates who were practicing in Chandigarh or in Delhi. So they were looking at someone who could do their work, and then knowing each other and being part of an office, I had the opportunity to learn my drafting skills and the filing skills. So that's how I picked up my work. And then later, the members of the bar, the senior colleagues at the bar, always look for young people to help them do their drafting work or research work. That's where your work comes from. So, I mean, if you're getting a client directly, you're really lucky. But normally, for a litigating lawyer, the work always trickles in from the bar. Your colleagues, senior colleagues, they'll be the ones who will be requesting your professional services to assist them in some matters of drafting, research, etc. And then over a period of time, your presence and, as I said, survival. If you still continue to be there, probably people who know that Sridhar is in Supreme Court would start thinking, "Acha, wo abhi bhi wahin pe hai, so you must be okay." And then they start giving you work. That's how it triggers. And then the people will get to know you. Visibility is the second part. By continuing in the same forum, people would know you in the corridors. People who come to give work to the others also keep seeing you. And how you conduct yourself in your personal space and your professional space is quite overlapping. And then I've seen that assessment to give work or not to give work in a majority of cases depends on how you conduct yourself in your personal space as much as in your professional space. Unless you become a very big star, that even tantrums apart, the clients need you. Unless you are that kind of a star, this makes a lot of difference. How you are in your personal space, be it your social media or your social interaction with people outside the court, even that counts, because people are always watching you. See, as an officer of court, you need to be a member of the bar, conducting yourself in a manner in a befitting that of a professional. So therefore, all those things are very important in building up a career for an individual.
Okay, sir. So my next question is, what significant changes would you like to see specifically in litigation field, which can improve the workings of the?
See, improvements in the sense that the system has always been learning from its experience and then adapting technology, as we've been watching. The sudden onset of COVID, the courts have evolved and ways and means of conducting matters. Right from the trial court level, courts are conducting their cases on WhatsApp group calls with both parties and the judge on a WhatsApp call. So, I mean, I think the court system in India and the Indian judiciary as a whole, including all stakeholders, have actually been very proactive in adapting to situations and then adopting to technology to take things forward. The definite thing that I would like to do or to suggest is, in fact, I had written article about use of artificial intelligence in aid of judiciary along with a data scientist, Mr. Ramkrishna Prasad Nori, who's a dear friend and then who's worked on this space for many years and is in fact working on my website where we put up a lot of data on the Ayodhya litigation. The entire data is digitized and kept online, available for anyone to view. So, what we're working on is to use artificial intelligence as a tool to enhance our research skills. I mean, here I would like to share my experience. I mean, being part of the Ram Janmabhoomi case, I was in the core team working with Sri K. Parasran, who led the arguments. and I used to be referred as the IT man for that team. Apart from the legal inputs that I could give with my experience of about 22 years at the bar, I always had a penchant for technology. I'm a good consumer of technology, and it always makes your life easier. And I feel that if there is a technology which can actually make things efficient, we should adopt to it, because your human abilities and human capabilities are to be challenged to do certain things which are at a higher level and not at the mundane level, which probably a technology or somebody else with a lesser skills can do. I mean, I'm not talking it from a point of arrogance, but it's more about challenging your abilities, your intellectual capabilities. So when we were dealing with this volumes of documents, eventually we figured out that it all comes to about 12 GB of paper data that Ayodhya case comprised of, and we were dealing with about 5,000, 4,800 odd pages of the High Court judgment split in 3 huge volumes. So, in fact, Sri Parasuran in one of the conferences had suggested, is there not a way that you can actually put it in the computer and ask which paragraph has this point? Because the findings on a particular aspect of a pleading or a deposition were spread over 3 volumes of 4,800 pages, and then I had the benefit and the privilege of working with Mr. P.V. Yogeshwaran and Bhaktivardhan Singh, who I think were the only two people in the entire team who knew the entire record by memory. And in a split second, they would reach out to the relevant volume and then tell the name of the reponent, etc., because they spent about 10 years working on that files. Now, for a person, I joined the team sometime in 2017. So, as a subsequent joining of my self, found that it was impossible for me to spend the kind of time that they've already spent. So I realized that there's some value add which I should be able to bring on table, being part of the team, apart from, of course, participating in the nuances of law discussions and the various research which was required to be done. So I started engaging my office into digitizing the records, because I realized that that was doable. And we were otherwise also in a very casual way trying to digitize our office to save space and then create backups of disposed files, etc. Then we started digitizing the entire record, and then one after the other, and volumes after volumes got digitized, and the whole thing eventually was digitized. Then we realized that being in a PDF format, we were not able to actually do a search within the documents. So we just converted something in a physical paper form into a digital form, but our ability to search within that was still reading the skills. So we had to find out ways and means where we could make these digitized documents, papers running into thousands of pages, in a machine readable format. So we had to redo the whole digitized version to make them in an optical character recognition method. So we had to convert them into OCR, and then I had my very efficient team of paralegals who worked with us day and night, and then they digitized it. As the case progressed, every day compilations of judgments running into hundreds of pages were being given. So we would get sets of those papers by the end of the day, and the next day morning by the hearing time at 10:30 or 11, my office would have digitized that, converted into an OCR, and then upload it into a cloud drive. And I used to be in the court with my iPad, and I had a mobile internet device through which I used to access my cloud, download those volumes, and then share it within the Supreme Court with colleagues and senior counsels onto their iPads using AirDrop. So that's how we actually shifted the entire technology into a courtroom scenario where, in fact, we would just glance at each other and then share the documents. We would know what we would need. And then WhatsApp was one technology we were using extensively to share records. In fact, the other side also, I mean, many a times that during the hearings, we would exchange documents. We used to fall short of the number of printed volumes which are supplied on each side. So in some instances, it so happened that we shared the soft copies across on a WhatsApp as well. That technology is so very easy to use, and then everyone found that it was not difficult, and then to follow the documents make notes on an iPad was quite simple. That apart, whenever they were questioning or discussion happening on any given point, the senior counsels would just look back and say, I mean, which volume or which deponent would have said something like this. So we had a couple of colleagues sitting in the courtroom with their laptops who would do a search within those documents, split up. There were about 128 volumes spread in different volumes. So we used to do a search among those volumes amongst 2-3 people on their laptops, figure out the volume page, and then pick up that volume, identify that page, and give it to the court. And then many a times you could do it in a matter of few minutes, which was quite thanks to the use of technology. Otherwise, we were depending on human skills, which were always there. And then many a times the human skills were faster than the technology. So I believe that ultimately it's the human mind which will have to use technology as a tool and not vice versa.
Okay, sir. What is your view on the sufficiency of environmental laws in India?
Environmental laws, I think we have abundance. I don't think we need any new laws. India is one of those countries, I think we have more laws than are required. And that is what is creating a hindrance in implementation in a way. What is happening is that if a simple offense is already made out under IPC, why do you need special enactments to make them more grievous or whatever? I mean, it's absolutely superfluous to me. I mean, having practiced for 20 odd years, I see, I mean, many of the offenses, matrimonial offenses, which have been created into or interpersonal relations into domestic violence, etc. Most of the offenses are actually covered by IPC. You would not need a new enactment for that. You just implement the law properly. That's all is required. And then because your efficiency or lack of it is actually making the society cry for effective enforcement, you bring in a new law. I mean, you are actually trying to hoodwink the people by bringing a new law. If you can't implement one law which is already there, what is the point bringing a new law? Because the efficiency of the administrating mechanism is the same. You're not working on the efficiency of the implementing executive. Then what is the point in loading them with another act? Because now, instead of one IPC and one CRPC, he'll have to examine what is the Domestic Violence Act, what is the procedure prescribed therein. And by the time he figures out, it will be 5 years for the accused. So, I mean, it's bringing in a lot of inefficiency, I think, bringing in new laws. Similarly, for environmental laws, see, we have had a Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, we have a Forest Conservation Act of 1927, you have the Water and Air Act of 1970s, you have the Forest Conservation Act of 1980, the Environment Protection Act as an umbrella legislation came in 1986. Where is the need for any new law? These laws are already in place. And the constitutional courts have been interpreting the fundamental rights to encompass within the definition of life various aspects of a clean environment and other things. So I don't see any need for any new law. I think the less law legislations that we have to administer, the more efficient the executive can be, the more certainty in law. It is uncertainty in law which actually creates a lot of confusion. I mean, if you are certain about your law and there's one code and that code is interpreted by the Supreme Court, that's the last word on it. It's only an efficient administration. And then in case of lack of administration, you have a national green tribunal, which has to ensure compliance of these statutes. To increase the number of legislations is a very bad idea to me.
Okay, sir. So my last question is, how can an organization like Law Community prove beneficial to the legal fraternity, and what new avenues are expected by the legal professionals such as yourself in the field of law?
As we are moving in from a real life scenario to a virtual life scenario in every respect of life with the lockdown, most of us are actually living in virtual environments. Your social interactions are distanced by 2 meters. So physical interaction amongst people has come down. Now we have to move into technology and virtual world where we are interacting with people only in a virtual space. So therefore, the word of mouth references for young lawyers or senior lawyers, which used to be the traditional way of networking or otherwise, now has moved into the virtual platform. So your presence in the virtual world is very critical, and then probably enablers like Law Community are the places where you can actually interact a wide spectrum of people, and then your opportunity to interact personally is much higher in these kind of platforms, because unlike in the real world, the chances of you going up to speak to some legendary lawyer are very bleak because of your own personality related constraints or inhibitions that many of youngsters with no pedigree in the profession or no powerful background would face at the initial stages. I mean, I speak for myself. When I entered Supreme Court, I would not muster the courage to go up and speak to a Soli Sarabji or a Pali Nariman, because we were in awe of such personalities, or late Sri P.P. Rao or Sri Parasran. So, but over a period of time, while working with them and then had an opportunity of briefing them or engaging them or appearing against them, you learn to know them. But with virtual court environment, I think that opportunities will be very low now. So, and your opportunities are in a way increased multifold, because you are in a position to reach out or speak to someone, and then they may or may not respond at that point of time. I mean, people keep writing to me on a personal note, social media. I try to respond to them, but at times it may not be feasible because of the kind of questions which are put, and then you would not like to respond to certain things because digital media is one media where it is indelible. So you may not want to say things in writing, which you may be more comfortable expressing in person, because the chances of being misinterpreted and misquoted are much higher in the virtual world. So therefore, those limitations will be there for people to respond. At the same time, your access to people, their way of looking at life, their experiences are now much more possible in an environment created digitally through agencies like Law Community or any other similar platform, which are connecting the students, researchers, professionals, and then young lawyers with senior lawyers. So it's a very good opportunity for everyone to think and understand on the basis of the benefit of looking into various more people that they get to see and read personally than one would have been able to do in a real world.
Thank you so much, sir, for having an amazing interaction with us. It will definitely gonna benefit a lot of young minds. We are delighted to have a time with you at Law Community and is grateful for the same. Thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.